Hello to all the new subscribers that came from the Gengar video. This is Diaries of a Beginner, a series I've been running on the channel for almost a year now. It follows my journey trying to learn a fighting game, specifically Guilty Gear Plus R, from the ground up. You can hear why I chose this game specifically by watching the first video linked in the cards above. I wanted to believe that I could get better at fighting games. They always looked really cool, but I consistently struggled getting anywhere in them, and there seemed to be no content out there about the experience of someone starting from zero. So I made just that, and learned along the way that I can get better at these games, even if I have been playing like garbage lately, which is the topic of this video. A bit of backstory. After I played in my first fighting game tournament, a beginners only tournament held by the Training Mode Discord, I felt like I knew nothing. I played horribly, and this was after like 6 months of trying to learn my character. So I tried writing a guide for myself, laying out everything I knew about Axel, and trying to bring it all together under a unified game plan that I could look back on if I ever started playing erratically again. That worked pretty well for a few weeks, and then I started noticing my inputs dropping like flies. Why? Because I had been too rough with my joystick. You see, on every joystick, there are little buttons called micro switches. Those are the clicks you hear when you move a stick in different directions, and it's what tells the game where to move you. Apparently, I had bashed my joystick so hard on certain special moves that it had grinded down the corners of the micro switches so much that down forward and down back inputs couldn't be recognized anymore. Thankfully, I had another joystick on hand that I could just swap parts with, but the whole thing kinda spooked me, and I've since made a serious effort to be more delicate with the stick. That proved surprisingly difficult. I became overly cautious with how I was handling the stick, and noticed myself moving away from doing even the most rudimentary motion inputs. Renson especially was a move I stopped doing, since its input is just a straight line from back to forward, and I would slam the stick in the right direction with all the grace of a sledgehammer. It's a miracle I never cracked my fight stick's casing on one of those. But even with that cautiousness kinda holding me back, I could still feel myself playing better. I wasn't going into any of the fancier options I'd been practicing, but I was more effective at the little things. It's most noticeable with my play in neutral. I'd gotten a lot smarter about which moves I used. A big hurdle for Axel is how situational a lot of his moves are. He lacks a go-to move that works in a lot of different places, which makes his neutral kind of unintuitive. Simplifying this aspect of my game plan was a big focus when writing myself that guide. I broke it down to kick, crouching kick, and far slash, and that worked really well for me. It helped me to stop overthinking a lot of situations. Along with the rest of my game naturally improving, I felt like I was hitting a stride and approaching the level of play I wanted to achieve from the very start. Playing Plus R felt easier than ever, which might explain why I felt fine putting it on the back burner for 2 weeks while I worked on other projects. I thought I could just come back to it and keep up the progress. But my god, was that not the case. 3 straight days of losses in the 30s and wins under 5. I felt like I was back at square one, and it sucked. It was so frustrating. I was playing like I'd never touched a fighting game before, as if all the progress I'd made simply evaporated in those 2 weeks. It also made me angry, like, what the fuck is going on? Is it really that easy to mess this up? It was made even more annoying since I've got something in the works that requires me to be playing well if it has any chance of succeeding. Once everything gets figured out there, I'll tell all of you and we'll have a new series on the channel. But until then, back to my love-hate relationship with Plus R. After 3 days of playing like shit, I tried to set some ground rules for myself when I went online the next day. Pretty basic stuff that would hopefully rein in my erratic play. Those ideas went out the window once I got challenged by a Mei player who naturally forced me out of the random play I'd been doing since coming back. I recognized the player's username from Twitter and was interested to see how they piloted the character. Mei is a character I play against very rarely, so I went into this trying to play cautious. What I quickly realized was that I wouldn't be getting close enough to Mei to have my panic button crouching heavy slashes bail me out most of the time. This forced me to look for other options, which was awesome. This Mei liked being in the air, in a way that felt somewhat similar to facing Bridget, one of my favorite matchups. There's a lot of movement, but pretty large gaps in terms of each comboable interaction. Because of this, I was forced to play with better pacing and be more mindful of my screen positioning. I was thinking so much about spacing that it shut out my worry about cranking the stick too hard on certain moves. I started playing like I knew what I was doing again, and even though I didn't win most of the matches, I think the score was like 2-10 before I hopped off, I still played so much better than I had been the past few days. They beat me because they were the better player, not because I played badly. I played right in line with the stride I was on before I took that break. It was really weird because when I hopped into Samurai Showdown basically blind for a recent video, I was playing solid by my standards within like 4 matches. But coming back to a game I had put actual effort into getting better at was giving me fits for some reason. It felt backward. It was very confusing, especially when comparing it to other games I've left for much longer periods and come back to without missing a beat. Pokemon, Trackmania, Shinobi Striker. After one game, one track, I'm 90% back to normal in those games. But after what had to be like 60 matches back in Plus R, I still felt aimless. Putting all of it together, the confusion of why I wasn't able to bounce back here and the stress of a few other things I've already mentioned, it started messing with me and it made me play even worse. One thing that did help me was seeing a tweet by a player I know is better than me, saying it took them around 3 days to stop playing like shit after they took a break from Plus R. It's like, okay, this happens to everyone. I just gotta play through it. I'm gonna bounce back eventually. That Mei set was just what I needed to get out of my own head. Start playing against my opponent instead of against myself. I've played a few other Meis since then, and I'm realizing how lucky I got. The Meis I've played after this one have been much more grounded and up close, as opposed to this Mei's airborne hit and run style. I've played a few other characters that tried this strategy though, which tells me that it was only a matter of time before I found the right opponent to get me out of this funk. I needed an opponent that would let me play slow. For all the subscribers that come from my Pokemon content, me calling this gameplay slow probably sounds deranged, but that's how it felt. There's a massive divide between how it feels watching what's happening on screen and being in control of it. Jockeying for space feels slow. It's when attacks are constantly being thrown at me that the game starts to become a blur. It felt good getting back to Plus R. I initially wanted to come back and build on where I'd left things. I wanted to start working on the Rensen FRC and slowly work that into my game. But going through this rough reacclimation stretch has made me change my goals. Instead of trying to raise my ceiling, I'm going to try to raise my floor. Whenever I take another break, I want to have my core fundamentals honed so that I can come back and play simple and still do well. That's naturally going to put me in better positions, thus giving me more opportunities to experiment with new ideas and combos and such, while not bleeding so much life because of poor play. 2 clear ways I could easily improve my game have to do with using one move more and one move less. Crouching heavy slash is still my panic button, the move I use when I'm either trying to break out of pressure or want to get my offense started. It's a great move, but I use it in the dumbest situations because I panic way too often. The amount of times I've used it on a jumping opponent trying to hit them when they hit the ground, like no wonder I get counter hit so much. Speaking of airborne opponents, Axel has arguably the best anti-air normal in all of fighting games, and yet I can't bring myself to do it when my opponents are jumping at me. I don't know what it is about 2S that makes me so averse to using it. The day I break the mental barrier I have with 2S, my gameplay is going to get so much better. That's the goal for right now. get myself more comfortable using 2S, because when I do, so many more options are going to open up. Have any of you ever experienced something like this, where a move on your character is clearly good, but you can't bring yourself to use it for some reason? I find it hilarious that I'm struggling to do this of all moves. It's so dumb that I just have to laugh at it. As for the actual question of the video, what's a fighting game you're looking forward to? I feel like the genre's in a pretty good place right now with new releases coming out and older games having their netcode improved so that they're more playable online. If you follow me on Twitter, you already know my answer, because I'm like the one person who's tweeted about this game in months, and that's Blazing Strike. The dev has been silent since April. I asked the publisher about a potential release date and they said nothing, but I'm still hopeful that this game comes out because Ghostface Axel looks so cool. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. Peace.